Hey, Saleem.
Hey, Touradj, how are you?
Doing great. How are you today?
Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I always enjoy our conversations. I know we've been
Yeah,
connected for a few years now.
absolutely. You guys have built a sweet business. I'm really excited to see you grow and love using OpenGo from the time that I first saw it in university and on Stanford campus to out here in Tampa.
Yeah, thanks, Saleem. We're big fans of Lavu as well. And one of the great things about Up and Go is that we are all over the place across the
hmm
U.S. A lot of
hmm
times people ask me if we're just in one region, and that's not how it goes.
Yeah, no, of course, of course.
So you're the CEO of Lavu.
Yes, yes, I've been the CEO of Lavu since 2019, I believe. Yeah, I started off in finance and operations and had an opportunity and have never looked back. My first job was in restaurants and my longest job has been in serving restaurant owners, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, I love when I hear people in restaurant tech that also have a background in restaurants. About half the people that work at Up and Go have worked in a restaurant at some point in time.
Yeah,
And
it's important, right, to have that mindset to be able to understand what our customers are going through and living. Otherwise, you can't build a great product, right?
yeah, you have to know their needs. I mean, when I got Up and Go started, I knew we needed our first restaurant, so I became buddy buddy with a restaurant owner here, and I
hmm
used to spend one day a week there. And although I technically didn't work there, I kind of felt like I was part of the
The team,
energy, part
sure,
of the team.
yeah.
And then the funny thing is, it took me a while to realize to kind of remember my own childhood. But my parents actually met because my dad owned a restaurant and my
Oh,
mom was
wow,
a server. And I guess the
wow.
HR policies were more lax in the 70s.
Well, if you own the restaurant, then the HR policies are lax, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I guess unless you hit the legal policies.
that's
But
true. Yeah,
anyway,
that's true.
I'm
Was that
I'm
in
a
California?
yeah. So I don't know how familiar you are with San Diego, but
Yeah.
in there's a seaside area called Solana Beach, and there's the 101 highway there. And my dad had a restaurant called Mr. T's Cafe because his name is
Wow.
Taraj.
Uh-huh.
And to this day, it's still called T's Cafe. I don't know who owns it.
Wow, that's great. That's
Yeah, but
awesome.
for people who were living in Solana Beach in the 70s, they tend to remember my dad's restaurant
That's
when he was
fantastic.
there.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So, yeah, more about Lavu. So, was Lavu a POS that was established already, and then you came into being the CEO?
That's a great question. So Lavu was started in 2010 by a couple guys in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who were sitting in a sushi restaurant in Albuquerque and saw the owner struggling with his big, archaic, black, expensive legacy point of sale system. And with the advent of the iPad, so Steve Jobs had just announced the iPad, they thought they could build something that was better, faster, cheaper, and serve SMB restaurants. So that was 2010. Um, Aldrich Capital, which is our primary private equity sponsor, they invested in 2015, and I came on in 2018. And I would not say that Lavu was established by any means. It had kind of a few $1 million of revenue at that time, and we were figuring things out. And yeah, it's just been kind of the journey and time of my life, starting with point of sale, adding payment processing, adding payroll, and continuing to earn the right to add other services to serve our customers.
Yeah, one of the things I've observed about POSs is that your job never ends.
Yes.
The restaurant expects you to have every capability, every feature.
Right.
And early on with Up and Go, people would ask me, "Are you going to become a POS?" And I always say, "Hell no," because I
Yes.
know how much work it is.
Don't do it. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Don't do it.
So the impetus for Lavu then was essentially the emergence of the iPad.
Yeah, exactly. That was the catalyst, and that's how we ended up in over 75 countries. So today, two-thirds of our business is US, one-third of our business is ex-US. uh, kind of by logo and by revenue, but we're in also a long tail of countries. And so when people are like, wow, that's amazing, congratulations, I wish I could take credit for it, but a lot of it is the App Store, a lot of it is the advent of the iPad, and really just having a product that people love that they can download and get started and get going right away. So that's very, very powerful. And since then, we've added other capabilities. We have restaurants that have over 100 iPads and iPad minis and iPhones running in their restaurant, 6 to 8 kitchen
Wow.
display systems using Up and Go. Right there, there's just a very, very sophisticated outfit and very, very complex. POS is the system of record, and everything kind of revolves around the POS for the most part.
Yeah, I see. Well, I've always thought that you should just be able to go to the App Store and download a POS, and that's what you've built. And I guess because the App Store is so international, that gets you that.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, well, I'm sure you could turn off countries, but what? But if you don't do that, you get all this exposure.
Yes, yeah, that's it's important. I mean, I think it works really well for somebody who just wants to use something that's kind of lightweight. But as you get into hardware needs and payment processors and other modules and kitchen display systems, you need to have a conversation with somebody so that they can help you think through the configuration that a restaurant needs. That I think is very important. But to get going, that we try to make it as easy as possible.
So are these KDSs also running on iPads?
No, the KDSs. So we have two KDSs. We have one that's lighter weight that's on the Lavu. That's the Lavu iPad version, and then we have one that's more sophisticated, and that's with Epson. Epson has been a long-standing partner of ours. They have very large screens. They have bump bars and they have touch screens. They can be highly configurable to the point where when if you want to move an order up, you can. If you want to move an order out, you can. Very, very, very complex. You think of the POS as basically an ERP system. It's a very, very complex bundled tool that and customers have very high expectations for, versus a point or a control pointed solution that's out there. And so you have to make sure you're hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about for terminals? Are they exclusively iPad
We use
or iPhone?
Yeah. So we have iPad and iPhone for the most part. For our kiosk solution, we have Apple and we have Android as well. And then for our new Marty product, which I'm sure we'll talk about, we're on iOS and Android as well.
Do you find it difficult to write for both platforms, or do you use some kind of cross-platform framework?
Cross-platform frameworks are really difficult in system of record type businesses because you don't have any margin to be wrong, and so it's important to write dedicated code for both platforms, and that's why we've been so focused on iOS. And every few years we get the itch to kind of do Android for the POS as well, to do a pure Android version, and then something happens. And so the first time we did that was COVID. There was a shortage of a bunch of Android devices because of COVID, and we felt like we had the best hardware partner in the world in Apple, which we still feel like we do. You can go to Best Buy, you can go to Amazon, you can get one in 2 hours. And then now, when we also feel like it's time to do something on Android, we have the semiconductor chips shortage, and that's driven by AI. And so it's kind of like, do we really want to do that? Even Apple put a price increase through last week on their iPads. So, there's always things that you have to consider. But by and large, we feel really, really good about working with Apple.
Is the motivation to support Android devices something that comes from the cost of the devices?
Yeah, yep, exactly. And look, anytime you can own the hardware and software and make it perfectly integrated, you would want to take advantage of that solution. It's like it's having a Tesla. I have a Tesla and full self-driving. People always say, well, why can't they just port the self-driving software to a Mercedes? You could. I just don't think it's going to work the way that a Tesla works. because you have that full integration. And maybe in the future that'll happen, but having that end-to-end integration, I think, is really important to be able to work, harmoniously.
That's why you like the iOS platform so much.
Yeah, exactly. It just works. Android
Yeah,
has
I'm with you.
a billion different configurations.
Yes, I'm with you on that. As far as Touradj Barman goes, I'm all Mac and iOS.
Exactly.
So
everything just talks to each other, right?
yeah, when I was younger, I tortured myself with PCs, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure they've gotten better. But
Yeah, they have. I
I
see
love
some
the plug and
PCs
play.
that they literally look like MacBooks. So
Mhm.
it's really interesting.
So people can download Lavu. They've got the iPads, iPhones.
Yep.
Does this mean that now the first time I ever saw Lavu, I was at a pizza restaurant, a very good pizza restaurant, but I don't remember the name, in Chicago.
Okay.
It was one year at NRA,
Oh, nice.
and the server came to the table and they had an iPhone and they were taking my order on an iPhone, and I asked, "Is that Lavu?" And it was Lavu. And
Wow.
I just thought that was, yeah, I thought that was so cool that someone could
Yeah.
just take an order on their iPhone. They didn't need to get other hardware.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can. We have a number of people that use iPad minis for their handheld devices, iPhones. We used to use iPod touches, but iPod touches are no longer manufactured.
Yeah.
I think mobile terminals were all the rage, I think, a few years ago, but it's died down a little bit because a lot of customers feel like it doesn't feel personalized, or if you come up to them and you're using an iPhone, they feel like you're on your phone texting, you're not paying attention to them. So it really depends on the venue. If you go to a fine dining place, they're probably not going to use a mobile terminal to be able to take your order. The guy will memorize it, right? Or the gal will memorize it. They'll probably mess up the order, but they'll memorize it, which is what happens.
So, well, you saying something really interesting, because if I were to look out at the POS space and restaurants in general, I feel like I've witnessed a trend where servers are more likely to bring a terminal to the table.
Sure.
But are you saying that that's kind of reversing and restaurants are moving away from that now?
Yeah, I think it really just, we have seen that reverse. One, because it's cheaper to have a central kind of station after you write things down. But technology, shifts, things move gradually and then they happen suddenly. So before it was, okay, notepad and somebody memorizing stuff. Then around COVID, the trend went to online ordering, which makes sense, right? And then you had QR code as a result of COVID because people didn't want to touch menus. And then you had mobile terminals, and now you're seeing a die down in mobile terminals, and you're seeing more kiosks because labor is too expensive. So there's all these macroeconomic factors that are really driving the change. And I think the next big change is going to be AI, and that's where we're really, really focused on within restaurants today.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. I will say that there's a theory out there that technology will eventually be invisible.
Okay.
So that kind of makes sense, because if you bring the technology to the table, it's very visible, right?
Right.
But you can imagine the evolution of that is that it's invisible, but it would still be working somehow.
Right. Exactly. Nobody really wants to think about their point of sale. Think about it, right? They just want it to work, and you said it exactly. They just want it to be invisible. Like, it should just work, and I should never have to think about it, right? That's the way that we want to be able to run our business. We're there in the background helping you. We know that restaurant owners provide food and service. We have to provide service better than the service they provide to their patrons. That's kind of the mantra that we have as an organization.
I love that you said that, because I always say that, and I've never heard any other tech company say it. Not to say that they haven't,
Yeah.
but I feel like, we're on the same page. Our job is to serve restaurants
Yeah.
the same way restaurants serve their
Exactly.
guests.
Otherwise, we don't deserve to. They can go find somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It's they have many choices, right? It's like when you're flying Delta or American, they say, "We know you have had many choices. Thank you for flying with us." That's true, right? It's that's the way we have to think about it.
Yeah, there's, in my opinion, nothing better than just treating the people who believe in you well and trying to help their business, because at some level we're not even selling technology. We're just trying to help them achieve certain goals, and technology happens to be the way you
Yeah,
do it.
that's exactly right. 100%.
Let me ask you a little bit about payments, because when I first got into this whole world of restaurant technology, which was about 10 years ago now, payments were very disconnected from POS. I mean, obviously, from a technical point of view, they're very integrated, but the companies that provided payments were separate from the companies that provided
Yeah.
POS. And obviously, there's some companies out there that have gone in the opposite direction, and then this has caused companies to see POS companies to see, okay, well, there's a lot of money in payments, and so, are we headed, and POSs now that didn't offer payments do offer payments, and now they're starting to be a little bit more aggressive with wanting the restaurants to process with them.
Yeah.
So how integral do you perceive it to be that the company providing the POS software is also selling the payments?
So when Lavu started, we were not the doing the payment processing for the restaurant. However, what happened was independent sales agent came to us and said, I will give you 3 years of the SaaS upfront in exchange for the rights for the payments. And we asked ourselves, why is this gentleman being so nice to us? And we realized that he was making so much more money than us. So long story short, we did end up getting into payments. POS, however, today is very commoditized in our opinion. There's still a lot of pricing power after you get somebody to become a customer, because the cost of switching is high. And a lot of that is a result of Toast and Square and some of these other folks not really focusing on SaaS or a monthly subscription and focusing more on payments. There's a psychological impact to seeing a company take out $199 a month from your checking account, or a $199 charge, versus if you're making $100,000 in your restaurant per month, somebody taking $199 out of your $100,000 payment processing batch. Right? It's really just psychology. Frankly, $199 of SaaS, somebody's probably paying you $2,500 to $3,000 in payment processing for that same customer on $100,000. So which would you rather have? If you're a vendor, you'd rather have the $3,000 versus the $200. So that's kind of where but as a result, that has promoted a very competitive nature in the POS space, driving up customer acquisition costs, and people just focusing on getting the payments revenues. Our view is we want people to stick with us for the long term. So we're thinking about ways to drive additional customers by sharing in the upside. So people have relationships with restaurants, and they always will. They can bring us the lead. They can keep the majority of payments or all the payments, and we'll keep the SaaS. So we're happy to work with folks that way too.
So you're saying that at Lavu, the door is open to bring your own processing.
Yeah, and I think there's a white space for a really good product, which I believe Lavu is, and you bring your own processing. You'd be surprised. Somebody always has a cousin who's selling payment processing. And so if you can convince your cousin to and if you believe POS is relatively commoditized and you want to help your cousin, then you should choose the one that's going to bring your own processing, which means our customer acquisition costs go down and we're still able to get a quality customer. So that's the way we're thinking about things.
Yeah, I think that's important to give people choice. I have noticed that some restaurants are open to us, like giving them some pointers on, where to get the processing, and not necessarily use the same thing you've been using.
Right, absolutely. It is important.
But for the vast majority, our selling point is, hey, we're not going to impose on you. So I would say 95% of our restaurants, they just use their existing processor, and we're integrated with, I think, 8 payment gateways now, which is quite a lot, too many to manage.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So one other question about payments before we move on is, well, actually I have a couple. So I I now iPhone has the ability to read a credit card to basically be the
Yeah,
terminal. Is that something that's part of
yeah.
Lavu now, or that
We,
you're gonna make
yeah,
part of
so we
Lavu?
process with Adyen. We have a number of
Hmm.
different relationships, but our core processor is Adyen, and on there we will have the ability to tap. It's called tap to pay on the iPhone.
Tap to
Yeah.
pay.
Now there is an
Yeah.
NFC chip on the iPad. However, Apple has not enabled that same technology, even though it could to do tap to pay. It would
Hmm.
be awesome if it was on the iPad, but it's not. But it's definitely on the iPhone, and it's something that we will have.
So you mentioned that the iPod Touch is not available
Yeah.
anymore. Is it difficult for a restaurant to essentially acquire an iPhone for a staff member because they're so tied to having a phone plan now?
Um, that's a good question. Most of them, yeah, most of them will either probably use an iPad Mini to do this,
Yeah.
and as a result, it's very easy, and you don't need a phone plan for those. An iPhone, you're right, is subsidized if you have a cellular contract, but that's one of the reasons why people just use iPad Minis or iPads even.
Yeah, a lot more
Yeah,
cost
for sure.
effective. And what about all these different countries? That's another thing I was really curious about because you said you're all around the world. So payments are going to be very different from one country to the next.
Yes.
How do
That
you
that that's one of the
handle
reasons
that?
why we chose Adyen is because they allow us to be through their platform to be able to access payments in other countries. So we have Denmark, we have
Hmm.
Canada. We're working on other options for Mexico, where we have a large presence. You definitely get Western Europe with Adyen. You get parts of the Middle East, like you get UAE. There's engineering work involved, but it does work, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to do that. And if we can offer an
Is
integrated
there
solution,
engineering?
sorry.
Is there engineering involved if you move into a new country, even when you remain with
Yes,
Adyen?
yeah, it's not. There's always going to be testing and code work, and there's always, you know how it is. The
Yeah.
roadmap is always full of exciting Easter eggs when you're going through it.
Yeah, yeah. I've over the years gotten inbounds from, let's say, the Caribbean islands, South America, and I've gone on these wild
Hmm.
goose chases of, what payment gateway am I going to use where, and it's always seems to be, at least for us, more effort than it's worth. Um, but interestingly, we are actually in one other country than the
Uh-huh.
U.S., and that is
Oh wow. Okay.
Bermuda because apparently they use the
Yeah.
US
Yeah.
networks.
Interesting.
So, our gateway seems to work
That's
just fine
great.
down there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I remember you have a lot of gateways. I remember you told me that. Yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah. Well, I remember in business school, there's this case study about Southwest Airlines, and one of the things they did to be so smart was they only had one model plane. That way they could have all the parts, all the pilots, all the technicians, everyone could work on anything. Parts were available for any model because it was all
Sure.
uniform. And I kind of went the opposite way with
Hmm.
gateways. So I should have thought back to my business school days
There's a
maybe.
lot of there's two other examples regarding that Southwest one that I always talk to my team about. Domino's highest growth and most profitability, from what I understand, was when they were serving either cheese or pepperoni and like a 2 liter of Coke, and like that was it.
Hmm.
Raising Cane's, which is like an up and coming chicken tenders place, it has a very similar model. It's like chicken tenders, French fries, and like, I don't know, buns or biscuits or something like that, and that's it. And so there is the ability to focus both as a leader and as a leader teaching your team or encouraging your team to focus and cut out the things that they shouldn't be doing is really
Yeah.
powerful. Focus isn't what you say yes to; its focus is what you say no to, right? And I think it's really critical to keep your eye on the prize.
Yeah. Small menu, kind of like
Yeah,
in and out, and you
yeah,
focus
exactly.
on what you can do. All right. Well, I know the hot topic here is AI. So let's get into that because we're friends on LinkedIn and I'm constantly seeing your posts about
Sure.
Marty and I want to learn more.
So Marty is a layer. that sits on top of any piece of technology that you might use in your restaurant. We're starting in restaurants, it extends to other verticals. And anywhere where you have a login, we will be able to capture the data from that piece of technology. And so it's very simple. You would literally add us as an accounting or a finance partner in your backend or your admin control panel. Using AI, we're able to ingest data. We actually ingest over 50,000 signals from restaurants every single day. And then what we do, it really solves two problems for restaurant owners today. One is it's connecting all these disconnected systems. So you have your POS, you have your labor, you have your scheduling, you have your training, you have your delivery. It brings all that information together and it gives it to you on a silver platter and explains to you, here are the numbers, but more importantly, here's what you need to do in order to focus and move the needle for your business. So that's number one. The second thing that it does is because you're using all these disconnected systems, you have money that's hiding in between all those different tool sets. So think of it as like coins or dollars or change hiding in between your sofa cushions, right? And once you start lifting up the cushions, you're like, oh, that's where that one thing went, or that's where that money went. And so the system is ingesting the data, normalizing it, and then presenting back to you, hey, your POS is saying one thing, but your open table is saying another thing. Right? You're really excited because your restaurant is full, but did you know that open table folks spend X percent less than people who walk in, because walk-in people are impulse purchasers and they want to have a good time. And so it's really giving these restaurant owners insights in a system to be able to run their business in a way that you and I would want to run our business. Because I talk to restaurant owners all day. They have 25 locations, 30 locations. They can't be there. And when they're not surprisingly, the restaurant that they sit in or they go to the most is the highest performing one. Just like when you and I are not in the office, when the cat's away, the mice will play. Right? And so this gives them a system to be able to run their business in a way that's operationally sound so that they can focus on growing and serving their customers.
So one of the things you talk about is restaurant operators losing money when they're not looking. What are some of the ways that happens that Marty uncovers?
So we actually just did, so the first part of the Marty system or the service is called a leak audit, where after we plug into your systems, we ingest, call it 6 months or a year's worth of data. And then we come back to you with almost like a diagnosis, right? Like when you go to a doctor, they do your physical. And so we did it for a restaurant group that does about $55 million of revenue across, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 locations. Pretty good, right? Pretty good size. And we found out that over a 3-month period, his cash transactions was $72,000 and he was missing $59,000 in deposits. Okay, so that doesn't mean that the cash is gone. It just means that he has poor process. And then we looked at another one of his locations today and we found out something very similar, about 30,000 of cash, but only 10 grand was deposited. So where's the other 20 grand? And so those are examples of lack of controls. Again, that doesn't mean that somebody is stealing, but our idea is we need to be able to surface these lack of controls to you so that you can make sure that these opportunities don't result in theft. A lot of times it is theft. We don't want to be accusatory. We just want to be able to present the leadership and the ownership group that this is happening. Another example is, voids, voids and refunds, doing it after the fact. The number one reason why people come to us is labor. So labor right now, kind of baseline is 30% of your revenue is labor. We have people running at 45%, which is, the cost of labor has increased, but they just don't know how to manage their labor, scheduled versus actual. People are using overtime. They're gaming the system and using overtime. So that's, in an inflationary environment, which is what we're in, people are actively looking for ways to save money. And this is what Marty does. It basically gives you an understanding of where your business is today, and then we basically put in real-time alerts to make sure you're capturing that recovered margin.
Those are two really interesting examples: cash management and labor management. how about with relation to, let's say,
Yeah,
food or
huge. So
inventory?
inventory and food is number two after labor. And so what we'll do is we will say, okay, you're working with Cisco, and they said that your prime rib was going to be X dollars per pound. That was the agreed on price. Then we'll look at your invoices and we'll see whether you were actually charged the agreed upon price. And then we will flag it for you and say you're actually charged 25 cents more per pound for whatever reason. It could be a clerical error. Now you have that information to cold call your rep and have a conversation and say what happened. That's number one. Number two is we will actually benchmark your inventory purchases versus our data set, and we'll be able to tell you if you're paying more or less. That then allows you to go and have a conversation with your distributor to say, why am I paying 5% more for this when I could go to another distributor and buy it cheaper? So it's again arming the owner and leadership team with this data information that they probably could do, but they just don't have enough time in the day. And it goes back to, what do they want to focus on? They want to focus on making great food and provide in service so that people have strong memories of actually going to their establishment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you bring up an interesting point. I mean, Marty will give you a lot of recommendations, but then you do need labor or your own time and energy and
Yes.
focus to actually
Right.
act on those. Do you see that people are able to do that with their existing teams, or do they need to dedicate more resources to responding to
No,
Marty's
that's the key
findings?
thing. So it's Marty is not really a replacement for a GM. The way that I was thinking about it is in order for AI to be successful, or in order for AI to be useful to somebody, to an owner, it needs to do a job. Okay, and the best way for you to know to if your AI is doing a good job is there a paycheck attached to the job that it's doing? One, is there a job to be done? Two, is there a paycheck attached to it? Because now you can quantify the return on investment. And so as I was thinking about Marty, what is Marty? Marty is just like a really freaking smart analyst or forensic accountant that sits right next to you, that's looking at your numbers 24 hours a day. Okay, and so how much does a really good full-time forensic accountant cost, or somebody, a kid who worked at Goldman Sachs or whatever? They're probably $200,000 to $300,000, and then obviously they're going to appreciate and get better in their career. And those people end up making five, six, $700,000 if they're really, really good. So that's a
Hmm.
really, really good analog to what Marty is. So no, you don't have to replace anybody. Marty might say, hey, it's Friday night, you thought you were going to have sales of X thousand dollars, but there was a massive storm that rolled through San Diego and on the beach, and so you should send two people home because your traffic is going to be a lot lower than anticipated, because your alternative is that those people are going to be hanging out in the kitchen on their phone, and then you're paying them for not doing anything. So that's the way to think about Marty. It's a really, really, really smart forensic analyst that's looking at your stuff all the time.
So if I'm a GM in a stormy San
Yeah,
Diego, do how does Marty talk to me? Does Marty
yeah,
text me? Do I look at a dashboard and it says, "Hey, let Joe and Susan go
yeah.
home
So
right
Marty
now"?
will send you app notifications. Right now, in the beginning, it sends you emails as we go through kind of the user acceptance testing process. There's restaurants are highly nuanced, as you know. We may see something in the data that you may think is completely normal or explainable, but once that's up and running, then you'll basically get app notifications on your iPhone or your Android, and then you'll also have a central place to log into, which is what we call the command center, and you can see your dashboard of your numbers. You can see the big things you need to do in order for you to be successful in your restaurant group today. And then we're also building this thing called skills. So skills, I'm probably the most excited about skills than anything. So your restaurant, okay, you may have a piece of analysis that you like to run because it's really indicative of your restaurant's performance. And so, for example, you may say, how did the restaurants how did the tables do in my restaurant that are by the window between 5 and 7 p.m. on a Friday? A very, very specific piece of analysis that you're running for Touradj's restaurant. And then the agent will go and run the analysis and give you the answer. And then you can basically say, okay, I want to see this data every single day because it's really important to me. My restaurant, which is also on Marty, can use your same analysis and run it for my restaurant with my numbers. You can run the analysis that I'm running for my restaurant. So it becomes an open source network community where we're all getting better because we're all running deep analysis that's unique to our restaurant, but we can all share in the benefit. And that's what I think is missing today in the restaurant space. There's so many resilient, smart people, but they just haven't had the chance to be able to share in each other's learnings. And that's one of the things that Marty and Marty AI does for them.
So how does that work? I'm in my restaurant. I did this analysis of tables
Yeah.
by the window, and that's all done. And now you're in your restaurant. Do you see something that says, "Oh, hey, there's this table analysis module available now"?
It'll say like how many people have used it, upvoted it, or number of stars, whatever it is, and then you can just one click, you can add it to your dashboard, and then you can see that, and then you can add yours, and it's almost like upvoting on Reddit or Google reviews. You can choose based on the number of installations. It's kind of like an app store in a way to kind of think about it. But that's basically how it works.
Yeah. So is it essentially like a self-managed app store where it just decides, hey, I'm going to make an app now because this guy did something cool.
Exactly.
And then it creates an app and puts it out there, and then
it's a
that's
skill,
pretty cool.
right? So in AI, when you think about skills, if you're running them in Claude or ChatGPT or whatever your AI of choice is, a skill is just a bunch of text that you are continuously running, and that's basically what it is. It's a skill that you've built for your restaurant that I can use and so can use and other people can use and share in that benefit. Or if you can make it private to only your restaurant group. Like there's a number of different ways that you can cut that.
What is the number one most used skill in
So
Marty
the one
right
that
now?
is everybody's most excited about is cameras. So we believe that all restaurants have cameras. I haven't talked to one restaurant owner that doesn't have a camera, but restaurant cameras are a very underutilized resource and inventory tool. And so when you ask restaurant owners what do they use their cameras for, they say, oh well, if something bad happened or somebody fell down or something, I go to the camera and I look at the video. Nobody's looking at that 24/7. However, with our AI and vision, you can see what's happening in the restaurant at any given time. And if there's a void, like if somebody opened the cash drawer when there was no check attached to it, it'll take that information, it'll run it against the camera, and the camera alert and that transaction will go to the owner. And so we're basically turning something that people already have, and we're basically breathing life into it to make it more useful.
Yeah, so you can get a notification that, hey, there was this suspicious void, and by the way, here's a video clip of it happening.
And then you can have a conversation. Not saying the person did anything wrong, but you can have a conversation about why that person did that or what's happening. Or you can tell your GM to go and look into it.
Well, you bring up another actually kind of controversial topic, which is this idea of people being recorded all the time.
Right.
You're probably aware of Flock and these cameras that are tracking everybody. Do restaurants have any concerns when it comes to recording all these customers coming in and out?
They're already doing it. And as long as it's in common areas, then generally my understanding of the law, and I'm not a lawyer, so please don't quote me, is that it's acceptable because it's done in a common area. But it's the private areas where I think that would be very problematic. I think with AI, you could even see waiters or waitresses wearing microphones, and you just talking to the person. Again, then it feels like a very personalized experience. Like, oh, hi, Touradj, I'm Saleem. I'm going to be taking care of you and your family today. What can I get you to start? You're like, well, I want some cheese sticks and a Caesar salad. Great. Touradj, you'd like a cheese sticks and Caesar salad. Goes into my microphone, goes straight to the POS, goes straight to the kitchen display system. Like that's easy. We could like roll that out today. That I think would probably have some more issues from a privacy perspective, but I could totally see that use case happening.
Well, that's the invisible computer right there.
Right. It's coming. I think it's coming.
There was some company that was, I don't know, showing up in my feed for about a year in Instagram where they were trying to create the next iPhone, except it was just a
Oh,
little
right, right.
pin,
Yeah, I
kind of like
remember
in
that
Star
one. Yeah, I
Trek.
remember that guy.
It looked,
Yeah,
yeah, it looked cool. At one point I was going to buy one for all our
yeah,
staff as like a
right.
holiday gift, and then it folded.
It folded. I think it ended up selling to HP for like 25 million bucks or something. But that guy used to work at Apple. He worked with Johnny Ive at Apple. I mean, he was a serious guy. He had raised quite a bit of money. But my understanding is OpenAI is coming out with something that's like that. I don't know when it's coming out, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, last night on my iPhone, what you're not supposed to do, scrolling
Yeah,
before bed, and I see this clip from everyone's favorite person,
sure.
Elon Musk. I say that in jest, and he's talking about the same thing. Like in 5 years, there won't be
Yeah,
an iPhone.
right. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Well, all these guys are trying to come up with new phones, but then they're running on
Yeah.
Android. So it's like, yeah, there are some Android phones which are absolutely beautiful. I just think, like you said, iOS just kind of works, and it seems to be the default place
Hmm.
where developers build first, and so it's kind of ingrained in sort of popular culture.
Yeah. Well, Apple is one of the smartest
Right.
companies
That's right.
around, so they
Yeah.
probably will hedge their bets in a
Yeah.
wise way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, yeah. Well, that's really interesting with AI and taking the orders. Um, so, how do you see other POSs responding to the AI movement? And do you think they're doing it the right way or not?
I haven't seen much. So I know Toast has Toast IQ, which is my understanding is it's a good product. It seems deterministic. It's like when you open up your bank account and you want to know what your balance is, you can do it. I believe you can 86 an item, which ours does too. But I think people need something. Now, I was talking to somebody today who has a really good product, not at all in the restaurant space, but does apply to restaurants. And I was like, why aren't people using this? This is like a good product. He's like, because of inertia. And so he's like, he said people don't want to use it because there's just the free version or the version they're using is good enough. And I remember when he said that, it reminded me something of what Ben Horowitz said. Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz. He said, in order for a new product to do really well, it has to be 10 times better than the old behavior. And so, in order for us to do better in restaurants with AI, it has to be 10 times better than what they're doing today. And so, that's what we're striving to build. And at least people build a 10 times better version. I just don't think people are going to use it. It's just too easy to use what they're doing today.
So you think that the AI built into a POS or that interacts with the POS and its other systems has to be 10 times better than
It
not
has to
having
be
it?
reimagined. It has to be built from the ground up. It can't be POS with AI. It has to be AI from the ground up. So that means new user interface, custom user interfaces, agents, all sorts of stuff. Um, and to my knowledge, nobody has gotten that right yet.
Yeah, it seems like every 10
Yeah,
years or so, there's a
right.
revolution in just like the iPad was a revolution and you guys
Yeah,
jumped on that.
exactly. Exactly.
Uh, 10 years before 2010, the web had a revolution and, people jumped on that. And AI is this new
Yeah,
revolution,
it's
they
exciting.
say.
Like we're living in a really exciting time. It's probably the most interesting time to start a new venture and do something big to affect humanity
Yeah.
in a really positive way.
The fact that we live in such uh, these in these times where we're seeing so much new tech so quickly is kind of what makes me believe in this idea that we're living in a
Yeah, yeah,
simulation because of the million years that humans have been alive. How are we so lucky that we're right at
yes,
this frontier? I mean, 100,000
yeah,
years ago there were
right,
humans and nothing
right,
was going
right.
on.
Well, they discovered
So
they
the
discovered
timing
fire.
is suspicious.
They discovered fire and tires and flying. For them, it's all relative.
Yeah,
It's all relative, and yeah, it's a really, really thrilling time right now.
yeah. Maybe they thought they
Yeah,
were at the
exactly,
cutting edge as well.
exactly. Nobody thought we'd be holding 6-inch screens, staring at them 24/7.
No, but we were supposed to have flying cars.
That's true.
We don't have
That's
those yet.
I used to be a big fan of the Jetsons when I was a kid, right? I know I'm aging myself.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. I watch the Jetsons too. So, thinking about AI, you do hear now that there could be a bubble, is a bubble, might be a bubble. And that's not unusual when there's a new tech, you have so many people rush into it and then there's sort of like a
Yep.
washing out to the best of the best. What is your take? Are we in an AI bubble overall as an industry, not just restaurants?
It's a good question. I think people are trying really hard to figure out what AI companies or products will actually deliver value. I
Hmm.
really wonder about this whole token maxing thing. I think enterprises and large companies are very annoyed of being charged tokens to run their code. I don't think the token stuff is going to work long term because I think Chinese LLMs are going to be free and customized. So it's going to move to open source. It's going to become a open sourced utility. So I don't know if we're in a bubble. There is going to be some like shaking out. I just don't know exactly where that's going to be. But it is evolving very, very fast, very, very fast.
Well, the famous AI from China that was so cheap to put together supposedly was
Yep.
DeepSeek.
Yeah,
Is that
DeepSeek,
right?
and now
Why?
he's using GLM, which is Olama.
So are you seeing, you still hear mostly people talk about
Yeah,
Claude and ChatGPT. Why hasn't it transitioned more to those
they
Chinese
have.
ones
So
yet?
if you look at Coinbase, you look at Airbnb, and you look at some of these other larger companies, they
Yeah.
cannot possibly afford to just use Claude and Codex to code. Like it's just impossible. They blew through their budget in like 1 quarter. So they have to find alternatives, and then you have these open source alternatives from China, which may have trade-offs. Like I don't know what the like security behind it is. Those are really really good, and you build your stuff on there, and then you check it with Opus and Fable, Claude, Codex, etc. So they will use them. It's just going to be 80% open source, and then you check it with the frontier models. I think that's the way because it's just too expensive otherwise.
But yeah, that's a
Yeah,
fascinating
yeah.
approach.
And I think that's where the world's gonna to move to. And I think AI is gonna be metered. It's gonna end up becoming like a utility, like electricity and water at some point.
Yeah, I could see that. And it sounds like you are you using AI in software development for Lavu as well?
We do. I'd like to do it more, but we want to make sure that the stuff that we're shipping is high quality. You have to be really careful about what AI touches. If AI touches numbers, it could be very, very wrong. And so we just have a lot of rules in place. But it should be it's definitely accelerated our release cycle and even productivity as an organization to do certain things, customer service, even finding leads, etc. So it is a very, very important part of the business.
Well, you said finding leads. I think that's a great leeway into another topic because I'm also a restaurant tech guy,
Yeah.
entrepreneur, and we're the lifeblood of any company is finding customers. So, without revealing your secret sauce, of course, more generally, what do you think are some of the best ways to find new restaurant customers if you're selling them technology?
I think somebody did a study a while back and they said, like, what are the top 100 Facebook ads of all time? And I think over 40% of them had proof in them. So I think the best thing one can do if they're starting from zero is use the proof and use the testimonials from your customer to be able to go and get leads. That's probably the best. And that doesn't mean asking them to refer you. That means figuring out where they were before your service, figuring out how they positively transformed after your service, putting that on a piece of paper, putting that on an ad, and running that. That's probably like the best thing that one can do. And then you do that across a number of different platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, etc. And you do it across different formats. But by and large, you're doing the same thing, which is old way, new way transformation across different formats. People tend to resonate with that the most.
So, for example, Marty saved
Exactly.
such and such
Yeah.
restaurant $20,000 in
Yeah,
labor last
exactly.
month.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or saved National Restaurant Association says like restaurant margin recovery should be anywhere between 8 to 12% a year of revenue.
Hmm.
Somebody comes to me and they're doing $50 million. I would love to tell them I'm going to get them $5 million back. But we like to say, we're going to help you get at least, let's start off with 1%. We're going to get you 100 basis points. And so that's a significant amount of money, right? And so that's our starting point. Then we go into the leak audit and we show them where their near-term money is, and then we start the process from there.
I see. So most of your sales and marketing is based on ad buying to get the leads then?
Ad buying, outbound. It's a portfolio approach of things. Newsletters. There's a number of. That's the thing is, you can pick a channel and you want to be really good at that channel, and over time you'll figure it out. But at the end, other people are going to realize that channel is really good, and then that channel has become saturated. The customer acquisition cost is going to become really high. It's going to become commoditized, and now
Yeah.
you have to find another channel. So you got to think about marketing in terms of a well that you can go to on a temporary basis, and then you just got to find the next thing. And you always need something that's working in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, because people will copy you
Exactly.
eventually.
That's just life, right?
Yeah. I used to have a really hard time with
Yeah.
that, but I've come to
Yeah,
brush it
exactly.
off.
And look, ideas are cheap. Execution is really hard. So people try to copy you all the time. It's really easy to make a landing page these days. It's like takes 2 minutes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, go to
Yeah.
Lovable,
Yeah,
make a
exactly.
website. I was looking at someone's website the other day, and at the bottom it said "edit with Lovable." I'm like, oh, I can edit your website.
That's
Sounds
great. Yeah,
nice.
I would probably advise them to take that off. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a flag
exactly.
for that. So.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot to check it. Did you ever do? Probably not, because you have the App Store and all that. Do you ever, or what's your take on selling to restaurants by just walking in the
It's
door?
really expensive. I do think restaurants are very much driven by relationships. Relationships are very, very important for restaurants. So I definitely think it makes sense. But it has to the economics have to match up, right? And I think Toast was really good at employing a hyper local approach to that, going to neighborhoods
Mm,
and being very successful. But again, it just depends on the type of LTV that you're getting from that customer in order to justify that.
yeah. It's also kind of, if it takes a certain personality, it's very hard to walk in
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just start selling someone
Somebody on the
something.
phone is uniquely qualified to sell on the phone versus somebody who sells in person. It's a very
Yeah.
different sales motion. We've had people do both.
And it seems like if you're going in on foot, you're going to try to mostly sell to the independent restaurants, because you're not going to walk into a chain and talk to anyone that can make a
Yeah,
decision.
given the up and go customer profile, I think it'd be tough to sell on foot. Now you could go to the office. You can sell on foot and show up at the corporate office. I don't know if you've tried
Hmm.
that, but that could be interesting. I know companies like Paycom, which is a publicly traded payroll company. We have a bunch of employees from Paycom. They've done that and they've been very successful. So that's one angle. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, the independence, my owner will be there, and I'm sure has been approached many times.
Yeah, no, it's just something I wonder about, because you're in a restaurant and you're like, hey, this guy really needs what I've got to offer, but it's not the right
Yeah,
way
yeah,
to
yeah,
approach, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So last question, I know we're almost up on time. Where do you see the restaurant POS market headed? I mean, there's a lot of players in the
hmm
space. Um, how do you see it evolving? Is it going to be the case where there's lots of migration from one to the other? Is there going to be a new AI first POS that starts to take away from today's dominant players? Is POS going to have its like niche? I mean, I know there's a POS that like focuses on breweries, and there's POSs that focus on
Yeah.
pizza places. Like, how do you see it evolving over the next few years?
I think that over 85% of the market is still legacy, so it's like Micros or Aloha on premise. So it creates a big opportunity for the cloud players. I think that you have a number of horizontal players like Clover and Square, which are typically the first systems that a small business gets. And then when they get to become a more sophisticated restaurant, they need something that's more purpose built. So then you have a conversation with us and you have a conversation with Toast. I think Toast is a great product, and I think you'll see the incumbents continue to do what they do well, and then you'll have startups who can afford to take more risk, who have to take more risk in order to make their mark, really disrupt the market. And that's where I think the world is headed, especially with the advent of AI. They're going to be thinking about things very, very differently. Nobody has done it yet, but I do feel like there's going to be some disruption in that space.
If some young entrepreneurial kid came to you and said, "Hey, I would really love your business advice. Should I start a POS company today?" What would you say?
I'd hit him on the head. And I'd say, don't do it. But I would be like, I would want to understand why he or she wants to do this, and help him or her think through, the pros and cons of the business. But like I said, man, I think we're living in such an exciting time right now that you can use AI to make a version 1 of the product. Literally, for the length of this podcast, you could have built version 1 of the product. And then you got to do the hard part. The hard part is distribution, which is what we talked about, and talking to customers and figuring out what it is their hair on fire problem is, and go and make that. That's where I think that's going to be really important. Distribution, and what people call in AI circles taste. Taste is probably another word for judgment. Building the thing that actually matters is going to be really, really important, because AI has allowed you to build a rough version of something where somebody can tell you, yeah, I'll pay for that or not. That's easy now. Now you have to go and do the hard part, which is refine it to the point where you've built a wedge that's really powerful and compelling and is solving a real problem, and then going to get distribution in a scalable way.
Yeah, the real work is in the long run. I think one of the craziest things, or one of the topics that I really hate hearing about, is restaurants wanting to make their own tech. And they just say like, "Oh, this would cost me $100,000, and then I don't have to pay you every month." But they are not thinking about, the fact that you continuously need to invest in your software.
Right. That's exactly right.
And so AI might get you to, version 1, like you said, but somehow it's never done. I mean, Up and Go was done 7 years ago, but there's still stuff to build.
Yeah, and you want to get better. Like, you want to be able to earn the right to serve or solve the next problem for your customer, right? And so there's always going to be stuff to do, and you can do it better than else if you stay close to your customer and figure out what their problems are.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. What was that term you used? The fire.
Yeah, hair on fire. A hair on fire.
Something
problem.
on fire. Hair on fire problem.
You don't want to solve like problems that are like number 10 on their list. They're not going to pay you for that. They'll pay you for the number 1 problem.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I have like maybe 5 or 6 of our partners have asked us for the same thing that's not out there, and I've been cycling in my head, do we go build this? But it kind of feels like it could be a hair on fire problem. So
test it out. Go to Lovable, edit the site with Lovable, and just say, hey, go to all your customers and just say, hey, I have this thing. Is this interesting to you? Like, talk to them.
I'll just make sure I take the button off at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, well, we're pretty much up on time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we might have not covered?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and congratulations on all the success, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Saleem. It was great talking to you, and I hope it's the first of many.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.